We're increasing it from 25% to 50% tariffs on steel. But we've already lost major jobs and customers, and those won't come back. We need answers now. Canada's trade minister tweeted that he's aware of Trump's latest announcement and is ready to defend workers and their communities. Our old relationship with the United States is over, said one official. Some believe steel shipments from Canada to the U.S. could stop completely. Meanwhile, France and Europe say they want to work more closely with Canada, the most European non-European country. As of now, this is just a break, not a full breakup, but if Trump continues like this, who knows? Trump has just dropped a trade war bomb on Canada, America's closest ally. In just one sentence, he turned decades of partnership into conflict. No talks, no heads up, just a massive 50% tariff on steel, double the 25% he introduced in April. The message is clear. America first doesn't leave space for neighbors. We're going to increase it from 25% to 50%, Trump said, referring to steel imports to the U.S. He says this will strengthen the steel industry. But in truth, Trump treats tariffs like weapons, and he's firing them fast. This time the damage isn't just to Canada, it's to the very core of the North American economy. When Trump first announced the 25% tariff in April, Canadian steel companies panicked. Shipments paused. Emergency calls flooded the sector. And now, he's doubling it. This isn't policy, it's a sneak attack. Trump says it will help steelmakers, but in reality, he's just scoring political points while risking cross-border stability. These tariffs aren't helping American steel, they're cutting off American industries. Almost half of all U.S. steel imports come from Canada. An ally, not a threat. Defense contractors, airplane builders, auto manufacturers, they all rely heavily on Canadian steel. Raising the tariff to 50% is like blocking your own airflow and expecting to breathe easier. Behind the scenes in Washington, panic has set in. Commerce Department officials reportedly warned of immediate consequences. The White House hasn't even finished the legal steps yet, and yet, Trump made it public anyway. This level of economic uncertainty used to come from unstable countries, not the U.S. president. Switching away from Canadian steel? Easier said than done. For industries like defense and aerospace, Canada is the top supplier of both steel and aluminum. Prime Minister Mark Carney spent much of his campaign opposing Trump's tariffs. For now, he's staying quiet, leaving it to Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc, who pledged to stand by workers and communities. Trump says the new 50% tariff will begin on June 4th, but he hasn't signed the order yet. This could be another repeat of March, when similar threats were made. Back then, the administration walked it back before it became official. Still, the constant threats have already harmed Canadian businesses. This isn't just bad economics. It's dangerous. Canada is America's #1 source of steel and aluminum. You can't just cut out half your supply chain overnight and expect nothing to break. This hits national security, especially in defense and aerospace. Canadian steel isn't a luxury, it's essential. And Trump still hasn't signed the order. We've seen this before, big announcements, legal confusion, and then last-minute reversals. But while Washington hesitates, Canadian companies are taking real hits. Orders are frozen, contracts delayed, jobs threatened, businesses need stability, not chaos. At the heart of the issue is trust. For decades, Canada has stood beside the U.S. in war, in peace, in trade. Now, Trump is flipping the table halfway through the game. This isn't bargaining, it's bullying. And while Trump plays economic games, Canada is preparing to walk away. Enter Mark Carney, Canada's new prime minister, an economist with strong ties to Europe and little patience for Trump's unpredictability. He isn't lashing out on social media, he's quietly planning. His silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. For now, he lets his trade minister speak, but make no mistake, his next step could change alliances forever. This 50% tariff isn't just about steel, it's a breaking point. One that might push Canada closer to Europe and end decades of North American cooperation. This is a punch in the gut, said Canada's top steel executive, reacting to Trump's tariff hike. Not strategy, not negotiation, just raw force from a reckless partner. A decision that doesn't just hurt businesses, but also shakes national confidence. We've had months of uncertainty, she continued. This is just another blow. Canada and the U.S. are deeply connected when it comes to steel. Each is the other's biggest trade partner. The supply chains are fully integrated. And honestly, she said, we have no idea why this is happening. The damage won't only hit Canada, the U.S. will also suffer, facing higher prices and supply shortages. And this isn't the first time. Back in March, Trump did the same thing, abruptly announcing new tariffs. People always knew he was unpredictable, but no one expected this, especially with how tightly the two economies are linked. The voice of Catherine Cobden isn't just one CEO talking, it's the voice of an entire industry. Canada and the U.S. built their steel sectors like a single machine. Metal beams, sheets, and welded parts often start on one side of the border and finish on the other. This is integration, not just trade. And Trump didn't just disrupt that, he destroyed it. No heads up, no explanation. Cobden's reaction reflects more than outrage. It reflects shock. Canada wasn't cheating or dumping steel. It was the U.S. most loyal partner, and yet it was hit hardest. Cobden says the tariff isn't just unfair, it's baseless. It ignores facts, it ignores data, and it ignores the long-standing ties that kept both countries strong. Her tone isn't angry, it's stunned. Friends aren't supposed to treat each other this way. Imagine factories standing still, orders canceled, shipping routes closed. Canadian companies that spent decades building trust with U.S. partners are now being punished for staying loyal. It's like being kicked out of your home by your neighbor during a snowstorm. And what does this tell the rest of the world? If the U.S. can suddenly turn on Canada, its closest friend, how can anyone else feel secure? Trump's unpredictability has changed the U.S.'s image from dependable leader to global wildcard. And the world is paying attention. Canada's steel-producing provinces are already reacting. Provincial leaders plan to push the federal government for immediate action. And even though this news is fresh, barely 12 hours old, Cobden says the core demands haven't changed. Even the original 25% tariff caused major problems. The new 50% just makes things worse, faster. We've already lost jobs and customers, she warns, and we'll never get them back. The silver lining? Canada has already been preparing because the damage didn't start today. The same requests were made yesterday. They just carry more urgency now. That first 25% tariff was already devastating, like a slow-moving storm over Canada's manufacturing sector. Cobden reminds us, this is real layoffs, real companies on the edge, and with 50%, that storm has turned into a hurricane. This isn't theory, it's happening. Shipments to the U.S. are expected to stop. That's half of Canada's steel market, gone. Imagine if every other factory in your country lost its biggest customer overnight. That's not trade policy, that's economic destruction. Cobden doesn't just speak in numbers. She speaks for workers, real people who've already lost jobs, real businesses that won't survive. And the painful truth, even if the tariffs are rolled back later, the damage is done. Lost trust is nearly impossible to fix. And this isn't about asking for a bailout. Cobden isn't begging. She's calling for fair tools to compete, ways to deal with global dumping, ways to survive without relying on the U.S. market. That's not desperation, that's strength. But what options does Canada have now? Cobden says it clearly. Retaliation is being considered. Emergency border actions are already in the works. The tone? No longer diplomatic, it's defensive. Canada is no longer seeing the U.S. as a partner, but as a potential threat. Between the lines of Cobden's interview lies a louder message. This isn't only about steel, it's about sovereignty. When your closest ally causes economic turmoil, it's time to rethink everything. New barriers, new trade routes, and possibly new allies. While Trump was busy tweeting threats and hiking tariffs, Canada's new Prime Minister was quietly making travel plans. Not to D.C., but to London and Paris. Mark Carney didn't just shift direction, he redrew the entire map. This isn't standard diplomacy, it's a dramatic pivot away from America and toward Europe. And there's no coincidence here. Carney is shaping a future where Canada no longer has to depend on an unpredictable neighbor. At the heart of this new vision? Defense. Canada seems to be exploring new security strategies. The Prime Minister recently introduced a bold initiative, joining the European Union's massive defense project. It was first revealed last March. It's called Rearm Europe. The goal? To spend $900 billion on defense, not to buy foreign weapons, but to build up Europe's military industry. The plan has two major objectives: to deter potential Russian aggression and to reduce reliance on U.S.-made arms. Canada shares both these priorities. Nearly 75% of Canada's military spending goes toward buying American weapons. That's why Ottawa is now considering other options. As Europe retools its military strength, Canada wants a seat at the table. The $900 billion Rearm initiative is about more than just security. It's about independence. Independence not only from Russia, but from the U.S. as well. For years, NATO allies have leaned on U.S. military support. Its equipment, its dollars, its decisions. But with Trump, that trust has been fractured. That's what makes Rearm Europe so crucial. It's not just a defense strategy, it's an exit strategy. Rather than buy weapons from the U.S., Europe will manufacture its own. Rather than depend on Trump's unstable leadership, Europe is choosing self-reliance. Canada's willingness to join this plan sends a bold message. The days of playing Washington's backup are done. For decades, 75% of Canada's defense dollars went straight to U.S. defense contractors. Billions that flowed south, only to be met with tariffs, insults, and economic threats. Now, Carney is cutting that stream and turning toward allies who understand mutual respect and long-term cooperation. This pivot is about more than weapons, it's about mindset. Canada was never meant to be an afterthought in someone else's strategy, but under Trump, that's exactly what happened. Pushed aside, ignored, dismissed. Now, with Rearm Europe, Canada isn't just entering a bigger room, it's entering as a lead voice. The old relationship with the U.S., a bond built on decades of growing economic and military integration, is finished. The system of open global trade, once anchored by American leadership, a system that benefited Canada for generations, is crumbling. Carney made that clear. France and all of Europe should work closely with Canada, the most European of non-European nations. Those words weren't symbolic, they were historic. Canada has been deeply tied to a U.S.-dominated system for 80 years, in trade, defense, culture, even shared values. But now, it's leaving that behind. And Carney isn't just saying it, he's showing it. His first official visit as Prime Minister, not to the White House, but to Europe. And while there, he didn't ask for approval, he made declarations. Calling Canada the most European of non-European countries is a powerful signal. It means, we belong here now, not there. And this new partnership has depth. Coordinated announcements with France and the UK. Every move Carney makes pulls Canada closer to Europe and farther from Trump's grip. But why now? Because Trump has made staying impossible. You can't build strategy around someone who changes his mind mid-sentence. You can't strike long-term deals with a man who governs by tweets. Trump didn't just alienate Canada, he pushed it straight into Europe's arms. And Carney, he's not being emotional, he's being calculated. An Oxford-trained economist and former Bank of England governor, Carney understands markets, alliances, and timing. He knows when it's time to walk away. This shift isn't just about Canada's protection. It's about setting a precedent. When America forgets how to treat its friends, those friends don't stick around. They build something stronger somewhere else. Trump promised to put America first. In reality, he's put North America last. His erratic tariff policies haven't only hit Canada, they've shattered the very system that held the continent together. The legacy of NAFTA, the promises of USMCA, decades of deep integration, now unraveling under one man's ego. I think you'll see Canadian exports to the U.S. grind to a halt, experts warn. That's half of everything we produce. Gone. This is no longer theoretical. It's happening. Half of Canada's steel industry has been wiped out almost instantly. No gradual shift, no buffer period, just a sudden end. This may be the final break in a trade relationship built over generations. When Canada stops sending steel, it's not just Canadian workers who lose. American industries suffer too. Auto plants in Michigan, construction in Ohio, aerospace in Missouri. They all rely on affordable, dependable Canadian steel. And now that pipeline is gone. NAFTA had its flaws, but it was effective. It allowed goods to move seamlessly, lowered costs, boosted employment, and created shared growth. Even after Trump tore it up and imposed USMCA, the core framework survived. But that, too, is collapsing. And not due to foreign enemies, but from within. Trump isn't using strategy, he's using sabotage. He talks about defending American workers, but his actions isolate them. U.S. manufacturers can't simply switch to new sources. Canadian steel isn't just cost-effective. It's trusted, tested, and built into the American system. Trying to replace it with imports from Asia or Eastern Europe is like replacing a precision tool with a blind guess. And worst of all, this crisis wasn't necessary. It wasn't driven by urgent economics. It was fueled by political theater. Trump is playing to his base, acting tough, pretending to win. But while he tweets victory, real businesses across North America are bleeding out. Donald Trump's aggressive trade and defense policies, like the 50% steel tariff and the $61 billion Golden Dome air defense proposal, are straining U.S. Canada relations. Instead of true partnership, Trump is pressuring Canada with costly demands, pushing the country to seek new alliances with Europe. Canada sees these moves not as cooperation, but as coercion. Ottawa is already adjusting its economy, defense, and trade strategy to reduce its reliance on the U.S. Business leaders, labor unions, and legal experts are warning of serious consequences for the U.S., including job losses, supply chain disruptions, and legal battles. The relationship isn't broken yet, but it's weakening fast. Canada is preparing for a future without the U.S. If Trump doesn't reverse course before June 4th, the damage could become permanent, risking the loss of America's closest ally.